Okay, with the Abish's help, we're going to do today's daf is Masechta Bava Kamma daf Ayin
Kamma, yeah.
Zion. What's interesting about this daf Ayin Zion is if you see on the page, it only has 2 lines. Is the whole Dumad, 2 lines. So they say over from the Bnei Yissaschar that he has a Kabbalah that the Tosfos, the whole Umad is taken up with Tosfos, that he has a Kabbalah that that the Tosfos was in jail. And it was the night before that they were going to put him to death. And he wrote, and so what do you do on the last night, knowing that you're not going to be around tomorrow? He wrote this whole Tosfos on Meruba. This is to show you the kedusha of the Tosfosin and what was on their mind, despite the circumstances that they had to endure. So it's kedai to remember this daf. It's the shortest Amid in Shas. With what it does for us, we don't learn Tosfos, is that we can get to a very short daf tonight. Okay, I just want to quickly review. In the previous Gemara, we had a statement from Rab Shimon, and Rab Shimon said that if you steal a kodesh, if you steal somebody's carbon and you shecht it, you chayev dalet v'hei. But you chayev dalet v'hei. So the Gemara asked the question, what do you mean if you shecht it? If a person stole somebody else's carbon and shechted it outside the Beis Hamikdash, he can't eat that meat. And Rabbi Shimon holds, if it's shchita that's not, you can't eat right away, or you can't use it, that's not a shchita, and therefore, why you chayev dalet v'hei? So the Gemara gave 3 terutzim. One of the terutzes from Rabbi Yochanan is he actually, the Ganav was a frum Ganav, stole the kachim from his friend, and what had happened? And he shechted it in the Beis Hamikdash. So he shechted in the Beis Hamikdash. So then it's a shchita ru'iyah. So the Gemara says if he shechted in the Beis Hamikdash, then he didn't steal anything, because the original owner was Yoitzev, because what was he going to do with it anyway? He was going to bring it for a carbon. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak said he shechted it in the Beis Hamikdash, but shenishbach hadam, the blood got spilled, and therefore the carbon was not the owner was not Yoitzev the carbon, and therefore the guy.
How can you take it and something which was stolen? It's not a kosher. And without the Kamma, you have to do it better now. How can I take it into kosher kudishim?
He gave it to the kahanim. You're right. I mean, for shchita, I bedafnish nan a koyin. I feel a plain mensch can shechten a carbon, but when the blood came out, shinishbach hadam, the blood spilled out of and therefore they couldn't spritz it on the mizbeach. Okay, then we had the teretz of Rish Lakish, who said really he stole an animal of kachim, but the animal was originally a balmum. The owner made a balmum hegdish, and his plan was to sell it and to sell it, and therefore and bring from the money a regular carbon. And this guy took it, stole that animal, and shechted it. We're outside the Beis Hamikdash, which you're supposed to shecht it outside the Beis because it's a balmum. So the Gemara said, but lemaisa, it's a shchita she'eina ruya, because the Gemara says both of these questions. The Gemara asked a question on both of these terutzim. Even if the blood was spilled, or it was a shechted a balmum outside the Beis Hamikdash, but at the end of the day, you can't eat this carbon as puzzle, because it's not a shchita ruya, because you didn't spray the blood on the mizbeach. Or according to Rish Lakish, if you shechted a balmum outside the Beis Hamikdash, at the end of the day, the Ganav didn't poida the animal. It's still a hegdish carbon, and it's something you can't have a gnaw from. If you shecht a balmum, hegdish animal bechutz, you can't have a gnaw from. So the Gemara gave you a teretz of Rab Shimon has an opinion that something that has potential but didn't achieve that potential, it's considered as if it achieved that potential. So we say kol ha'oimid lizrik, if you had the potential to spray the blood on the mizbeach, kizorek dami. That's Rab Shimon's opinion. It's as if you sprayed it on the mizbeach. So therefore, it becomes a shchita ru'uya, even despite the fact that the blood spilled out, because you had the potential to spray it on the mizbeach. And now we go on the bottom of the page. V'chol ha'oimed, we're going to learn v'chol ha'oimed. right over here, bottom of the page of Ayin Vova Mebeis. So we see from here, Alma, we see Kol Ha'oimed Lizroi Kizorik Dami. Reb Shimon holds anything that is potential to be sprayed, it's considered as if you sprayed it, the blood on the Mizbeah. And same holds true by if you shechted a balmum outside the Beis Hamikdash. The animal is a kachim animal, right? But v'chol ha'oimed li podeis, if you have the potential to redeem the animal, even though you didn't redeem it yet, we consider it as if kipodudomi, as if it's redeemed. Where did Rav Shimon say this idea that a potential is considered as if it happened already? The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, Rav Shimon said, we go to Ein Zayin. Rav Shimon, remember, there's an important point. In order for something to mikabel tumas oichlin, it has to be a food, right? A food that you could eat. If you have a food that's aser b'hanah, according to Rav Shimon, it would not be mikabel tumah. Why? Because the Chumash says regarding being mikabel tumah, it says v'chol oichel asher ye'achel, only food that you eat. So therefore, if it's a food that you can't eat, it would not be makabel tumas oichlin. Now the paraduma, if they shechted the paraduma, remember they used to shech the paraduma on harazesim. As soon as they shech the paraduma, that cow is aser bahana. So the Gemara says mitama tumas oichlin. Reb Shimon says, despite being aser bahana, it would be makabel tumas oichlin. Why? Since you could have eaten that animal for a moment. After you shechted it, it was potential to be eaten as a regular food, right? You shechted it as a paraduma. So we just go to Ayin Zayin Beis. Because Reb Shlakish says, Reb Shimon would say that parad nivdes agave malachta, that potentially you could have, despite shechting the paraduma, right? You shechted this red cow, you could redeem it and say, you know what? I don't want this to be the paraduma. I found a nicer paraduma. And therefore, while it's still on the being burnt on the whatever it was, on that fire roast, right? They would burn, the para could still be redeemed, and it has potential to be redeemed if you decide to not use this thing that you shechted as a paraduma, but you decide rather to get a nicer one. So because of that, therefore, this potential over here that this will not be your paraduma. And even though you didn't redeem it, but there's potential that it could have been redeemed. And if it was redeemed, then it becomes food that you could eat. And therefore, the kabel tumas oichlin. So Alma, we see from here, anything that has potential to be redeemed, we consider it is as if it's redeemed. Okay, that answers that explanation of Rab Shimon. Now, again, Rabbi Yochanan had the case of Rabbi Shimon was Rabbi Yochanan is the Ganav stole the kachim, brought it into the Beis Hamikdash, and shechted it in the Beis Hamikdash, but the blood spilled out. Rabbi Shimon ben Shlakis said the case is the man stole a balmum, an animal that the original owner made a balmum as hagdish, and then shechted it outside the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara says, why did they give two different terutzim? Bishlama Rabbi Yochanan Omek Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan want to say, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, the kaboya la'oikl masmimim afila betmimim. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to explain our Mishnah where Rabbi Shimon is talking about stealing hegdish from somebody. It's even if you stole a hegdish animal that does not have a moon. That's the better way to say. Most hegdish animals do not have a moon. Ela Rish Lakish, who has a different teretz, my time Rabbi Yochanan. Why didn't he say like Rabbi Yochanan? Why didn't he say like Rabbi Yochanan that it's talking about a tmimin that you brought it into the Beis Hamikdash? Answers the Gemara, Amalach, Rabbi Shlakish is going to tell you like this. There is a problem with Rabbi Yochanan's teretz, because with Rabbi Yochanan's teretz, if a man stole an animal that's a complete hegdish animal, an oila from somebody, right? So the only thing he can do with it to take it to the next step is only shecht it. He cannot sell it because you cannot sell a hegdish animal. So therefore, but the Torah says that when you steal an animal, you have potential to do both, or selling it. So so Rab Shlokish has this drasha utvachei umachari. In order to be chayav v'dalad v'hei, you have to have a choice to either shech the animal or sell the animal. So kol heicha the isa b'mechira. If you have potential, if you could sell the animal isa b'tvicha, then you get the iser of shechting the animal, and you chayav dalad v'hei for shechting the animal. The kol heicha the leisa b'mechira. If it's something that you can't sell, leisa betvicha, then there is no obligation. If you shech the animal, you will not be liable for dal v'hei. You have to have the choice to do both. According to Rabbi Yochanan's teretz that we're dealing with, to meet a balmum that's a tamimim, right? So then, according to him, when you sell kachim, loy have a mechira, you can't sell kachim. So if the ganav stole kachim from somebody, you can't resell it. So because of that, there's no dalad v'hei on mechira, less nei betficha. So even if you shech the animal, you will not be chayav dalad v'hei. And so that's a very new thing that Reb Shlokish brought into the play over here. That when you steal an animal, you have to have, in order to be chayav dalad v'hei, you have to have a choice to either do tvicha or mechira. But Rabbi Yochanan says not necessarily so. Sometimes you could only do mechira. Sometimes you could only do tvicha, and still you'll be chayav dalad v'hei. V'ozdu l'tameo. Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish are aligned with their opinions. The itma we learned. Now, Reb Shimon, as we said many times, when you shecht an animal, in order to be chayav dalad v'hei, you have to be able to eat the animal. So therefore, according to Reb Shimon, if someone steals a treifa animal, right, the animal is about to die, so then, and you shecht it, you wouldn't be chayav dalad v'hei. So because it's an animal that after you're shechting, you won't be able to eat it. So what would happen? According to Reb Shimon, if you just sell the treifa, would you be chayav dalad v'hei? Rabbi Yochanan Amar chayav. Yes, why not? You sold it. Rish Lakish Amar potter. Reb Shlokish says potter. So then the Gemara explains exactly what we said. Rabbi Yochanan Amar chayav. Rabbi Yochanan says chayav avagav the leisi betvicha. Even though you can't do shechting of the animal, isa b'mechira, you could still sell the animal. One is not independent of the other. One is not dependent on the other. Rish Lakish potter. Reb Shlokish says you potter. Okay, when the leisa betvicha, leisa b'mechira. Since you can't do shechting the animal, there's no selling of the animal. Therefore, according to Rish Lakish, if you sell a treifa animal, you're not chayav dalad v'hei because you can't shech the animal, according to Reb Shimon. Eisvei Reb Yochanan Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Reb Yochanan asked the question to Reb Shimon ben Lakish from a brisa that seems that the author is Reb Shimon. The brisa says like this: Ganav kalayim. If a man steals kalayim, now kalayim means the Torah says dalad v'hei applies by a seh and a shor. What is a seh? A seh could be a sheep, but it could also be a goat, right? What happens if you have kalayim? Let's say you have a goat, a male goat that mated with a female sheep. So would there be dalad v'hei? So the brisa says if you stole kalayim utvach and you shechted it, or a case of like this to the treifa, if you stole a treifa animal umachara and you sold it. Now look at it; only says sold it, selling it. Mishalim abava chamisha. So the Gemara says, why did the brisa say that treifa, your only choice is to sell the animal in order to be chayav dalad v'hei? My love, the Rab Shimoni, the author of the brisa is Rab Shimon, because according to the Rabbanim, treifa, you could even shech the animal, because they don't need that the animal to chayav dalad v'hei, you have to be able to eat what you shechted. But since the brisa was pretty medactic on its words and said by treifa only if you sold the animal you pay dalad v'hei, must be the brisa. The author of the brisa is Rab Shimon and Alma. We see that despite that you can't do tvicha, you could still do mechira to chayav dalad v'hei. Afagav the leisa betvicha, even though you can't shech the animal, isa b'mechira, you could still be liable for selling the animal because of dalad v'hei. And therefore, this is a question according to Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says a treifa according to Rab Shimon, you would not pay dalad v'hei. Amalei, so Rish Lakish will answer you, not so, Rabbanim. The author of the brisa is Rabbanim. So then, why did the brisa say treifa mechira? Rabbanim, if the brisa is Rabbanim, treifa mechira isa b'zvicha leisa. Treifa you could only sell to be chayav dalad v'hei and not shechted. According to Rabbanim, you could do both because they don't hold shchita You don't need a shechita that you could eat from. Even if you shech the treifa, you still chayav dal v'hei. So why did the Brisa only say, oh, treifa mechara, you pay dal v'hei? The elam. So the Gemara says, so Rav Shlaka says back, what do you think? You're better? Velamai Rav Shimon? You think you're better because you said the author of the Brisa is Rav Shimon? Kalayim b'tvichi isa b'mchira lesa. Kalayim, if you shecht kalayim is only liable if you shecht it, not if you sell it. Of course, even according to Rav Shimon, you have the choice. You could do both by a kalayim animal. You could shecht it or sell it. There's nothing wrong with that. So Ella. So even if you said the Brisa is Rav Shimon, you could have to say, you also have to push yourself to say that the Brisa is not so particular in its word. It said tvicha, but it meant also mechira. So I'll tell you that the Brisa is not Rav Shimon. The author of the Brisa is Rabbanan. And Tana mechira tvicha. It just gave you an example. It meant both bechira and tvicha. So according to Rav Shlakish, the author of the Brisa is Rabbanan. And Ganav Klaim Utvacha means Utvacha or Mechara, and Treifa Mechara means Treifa and Tvacha. You could do both. So this is a nice way to learn up the Brisa according to Rav Shlakish. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Amalach, Rabbi Yochanan say, Hi Mai, your teretz is a little difficult. Iamid, if you say like me, Bishlama Rav Shimon, that the author of the Brisa is Rav Shimon, so I could say, according to Rav Shimon, by Treifa you only have one choice. You could only sell it, but not shecht it. So I did a ton of treifa bechada. Since by treifa it had to give you only one choice, ton of klayim bechada. That's why by the klayim, the beginning of the price, it says klayim, you only have one choice. But Eli Amrit Rabbanan. But if you say that the Brisa is according to Rabbanan, so Rabbanan, you have two choices by both of them, by Treif and Klayim. They are Vinhu Vinisninhu. Let the Brisa put them both together and say it in a very short way. Gone of Klayim and Treifa. If you steal Klayim and Treifa, Tvachon Umacharan, and you do both, either shecht it or sell it. Misham Tashlumi Abava Chamisha. So because of that, that would make sense according to Rabbanan. And the fact that the Brisa does not do that indicates that the author of the Brisa is Rab Shimon. And if the author of the Brisa is Rab Shimon, then Rabbi Yochanan would be correct by saying that despite by treifa you can't shech the animal, but you could still be liable, but dalad vehei, if you just sell the animal, and not like Rish Lakish, that you need to have a choice to do both. So Kasha, this is a quick question against Rish Lakish. Now we'll finish up the last point of tonight, Kalayim. So the Gemara asks, how could it be Kalayim? Again, Kalayim over here means that a sheep, right? A sheep doesn't mate with an ox, but Kalayim, a sheep mated with a goat. It's not a pure goat. It's not a pure sheep. So therefore, you still chayav dalad v'hei. So the Gemara asks, but sexiv, the Torah says sheep. Wherever it says, the Torah means to say only a sheep or only a goat, but not both. I think in this week's parsha it says seh izim, seh kvasim. So it says seh. So the question is, Rava says, whenever it says seh, it means not climb. You can't mix goats with sheep. And how could you say by dalad v'hei, a goat with a sheep can be chayav dalad v'hei? So the Gemara says, Shani Hacha, by Geneva, by Tvicha Mechira, it says it could be a mixture. The Amakra, Shar Oy Seh. The Rabbi says Klayim. It says the word Oy, so that indicates to include Klayim as part of Dalad V'hei. Says the Gemara, V'chol Oy l'Rabbi Su, wherever you're going to see the word Oy, it's Marba Klayim. Vatanya, we learned in a Brisa, Shor Oy Chesef, it says Shor Chesef to bring as a carbon. You have an ox or a sheep. Prat l'Klayim. You can't bring a Klayim. In other words, if you have a sheep that's not a pure sheep, it's a mix with a goat, then you can't bring it as a carbon. Oy eis, shara kesev oy eis. The Torah says another oy or an eis. So prat, that it's an exclusion linidma. That what's interesting, if there's something genetically wrong with the sheep, you have a regular sheep with a male sheep, and they have an offspring that does not look like a sheep. So it appears like another animal. That's also possible for a carbon. So we see that the oy by carbon is coming to prat, to exclude things. So how could you say by dalad v'hei the oy is coming to include things? Answers the Gemara, Amar Rava, hacham in yana dekra, the hacham in yana dekra. If you observe the topic of the pasuk, you'll come to the same conclusion. Hacham by geneva the ksiv shor I said. The Torah says you have dalad v'hei by ox or a sheep. Now the Torah could have written shor visa. She ata yochel lahoitzi kalayim b'bneim. You couldn't obviously without the oy. I know it to exclude kalayim because you can't bring out kalayim from a shor and a seh. They don't mate with each other. So therefore, the Torah did not have to write an oy to exclude kalayim. I understand a kalayim would be excluded on its own. So why did the Torah write the word oy? So by geneva it means l'rabais kalayim, to include kalayim. By kochim you have the opposite thing. The ksiv kasav eight, a sheep and a goat. Now if the Torah they could mate, a goat and a sheep could mate, and therefore the Torah without that I would have said it includes kalayim. So therefore, oy in that scenario in kochim l'maydu, it's going to come to exclude kalayim. We go to Ayin Ches. We're going to just do a few more lines and then we'll stop. Says the Gemara. Okay, so the Gemara just got through saying that oy. It depends on the context of the pasuk. Sometimes by kochim oy is coming to exclude, and by the Geneva, by Dal Behei, the oy is coming to include. Says the Gemara, Vagabe Kochim Nami Nema. It also says shor oy kesev, and a shor cannot mate with a kesev. So the oy by Kochim, right? This oy should also be an exclusion. She'einat yochel lahoitzi kalayim b'bneiim. Unarabe, let that oy come to include kalayim. So the Gemara says, Midas Sefer L'mayit, since the end of the pasuk, oy is exclusionary. So Reish Nami L'mayit. So then the first oy is also an exclusionary. So Gemara says, Adarab, just ask back. Midas Reish L'Rabbe, since this oy, Shara Kesef, is inclusionary, Sefer Nami L'Rabbe, so the oy a should be also inclusionary. So the Gemara concludes and says very simple, Hi Mai. If you say that both oys, the beginning of the pasuk, Shara Kesef oyes, both oys are coming to exclude who the itzrich trei miuti, then I understand why you need two exclusionaries. The afagav the imayit kalayim, even though you excluded kalayim that has a different father, it's a goat and as a father and a sheep as a mother, that I need another miyut at exclusionary itzrach lemute nidba to exclude something that does not appear like both parents. That even if you have a sheep with a male sheep and a female sheep, if the offspring does not look like them, it's possible for a carbon. So not only a kalayim is possible for a carbon, but even a nidba is possible for a carbon. So then it makes sense to have two miyutim. Eli Ahmed by Kochim, both of them are rabbis, and they're both being marba kalayim, ribuyel trail, ribuyel lamed. Then what do I need? Shor oy kesev oyes. Just tell me one riboy. Hashta kalayim irabis. If you're going to tell me kalayim is good for a carbon, nidma maboya would nidma certainly be good for a carbon. So that's why the context of oy by kochim is to exclude. Is to exclude, and the context of oy by dalad vehei includes kalayim. So we'll stop over here.